All right, welcome in for episode number 39 of the Ball Boys podcast. A hoops episode here for y'all. Apologies for missing last weekend. Nolan had to go to Penn State and watch Michigan do what Michigan does to Penn
Mhm.
State at this point. I was down in Philly, so but we're back early on in the NBA season, and there's just a lot to cover, more to cover. We're gonna get to the Sixers and their hot start, and James Harden and the Clippers more towards the end of the podcast, just because it's a little out of date. But if anybody was waiting on our reactions to that, stay tuned. They will be there. All timestamps should be in the description. But we got to start today's episode with the Chicago Bulls. And if I had to guess, the Chicago Bulls leading off an episode won't be a thing past February. Because this team, and I think rightfully so, is getting ready to blow it up. The Zach Lavine, DeMar DeRozan, Vucevic big three, personally to me, never had the wheels to get off the ground. They have a negative point differential when that big three is healthy. Some big threes, there were some teams, etc. It's, oh, if this guy was healthy, yada, yada. The Bulls have been a relatively healthy team at the top, and they're still not getting to 500. They're still not getting to, 50, 45 wins. So it's time for a change, rightfully so, and they're going to look to clean house. So the big names that are looked at to be potential trade targets for teams will be Zach Lavine. Obviously, he's the best player on the team, a shooter, a guy who can create his own shot. 3 years left on his contract. You got DeMar DeRozan, who, still a lethal scorer, a guy who can create his own shot, a mid-range god, and Alex Caruso, an all NBA defensive player, a guy who can shoot, who can work off the dribble. So definitely really, really valuable assets on this team, really, really valuable pieces to start a rebuild if they play their cards right. Now, the first player that I want to talk about in this is, of course, Zach Lavine. There's expected to be many suitors here, but I'm going to be honest. At this point, I only see Zach Lavine going to one team, and that's the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat missed out on Dame Lillard this offseason. Then they missed out on Drew Holiday. They still have all the draft capital and pieces to get a deal done. They're now 8-4. So we thought earlier on in the season maybe the wheels were going to fall off, but they're in a decent spot. And it feels like adding a Zach Lavine could thrust them into really that Celtic 76ers tier of the Eastern Conference right now. And they have the pieces to do it. But I think the most important thing is they have the pieces to do it right now. Two of the other top two teams involved in the Zach Lavine sweepstakes are the Los Angeles Lakers and the Philadelphia 76ers, each of our teams. With the Lakers, you can't move D'Angelo Russell's contract until January 15th. Due to him being signed in the offseason. The same with a guy like Rui Hachimura, etc. And for the 76ers, who just traded for Nicholas Batum, Morris, and them, to move that money, you have to wait until January 1st. Whereas the Miami Heat could pull the trigger on a Zach Lavine trade today. And ultimately, I think that ends up being the difference. I think the Bulls want to kind of clean house, get some of the young guys, Io DeSumo, Kobe White, Patrick Williams, some touches, and as much time on the court as they can to develop and kind of see what they have going into an offseason. So for me, it's clear cut the Miami Heat, but do you think that there's a real Zach Lavine race at this point? And maybe a team that I didn't say gets involved, like the Brooklyn Nets or et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's been linked to the Sixers a lot. That was kind of like the big thing going on, but I honestly think that the Sixers might be a little bit content on how they're doing right now with their depth and maybe their future stuff, free agency for next year.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Levine's very good, but I don't know if he pushes the needle enough to get rid of what you have right now because they're playing great basketball if you're the Philly Sixers. But Miami, like you said, I think that's probably the favorite right now. Like you mentioned, they lost a bunch of guys, possibilities over the summer. And like you said, they're playing a lot better basketball than we expected heading into the year. And I mean, their past shows a lot that whoever they get, they take them from like a 5 to a 10. So if they get
Yeah,
Lavine, like
he'll
they'll
be
get
an All NBA guy, I'm sure.
yeah, for sure. So I think, hey man, I think the Heat, that's a perfect fit for him. Miami's awesome, and then yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I certainly think Brooklyn is interesting. I'm not really sure what direction they want to go in at this point. Early on in the season, it just hasn't been clear to me if this team
Mhm.
is trying to be a playoff team or they're just kind of retooling, rebuilding. I do want to talk about Zach Lavine and his fit just with the Lakers and the Sixers. Just have the conversation about it. I don't think his fit with Philadelphia is as great as certain people on Twitter think it is. I think at this point, with the way that Tyrese Maxey has played, you want the ball in his hands as much as possible, and you're not going to trade all those assets, get draft capital, and have Zach Lavine's money on the books for him to be kind of a spot up shooter. A team that trades for Zach Lavine is going to want him to handle the ball a decent amount. And I just don't know if that's Philly right now with the way that the ball is moving with this current core of guys. And for the Lakers, yeah, it's a good fit. A scoring guard again alongside LeBron James and Anthony Davis. It's worked for them successfully both in separate areas of their career. I'm sure it would work great together. This offseason, that's why I was so high on I thought the Lakers should pursue Kyrie Irving. Zach Levine's not Kyrie Irving, but they do have certain similar prototypes in terms of they are scoring guards who can shoot, play off the ball, not a problem, but as well, if you give them the ball, they can create their own shot. So that's my biggest thing. And the Lakers don't have a true point guard, so I don't think there'll be a problem with getting Lavine his touches, especially in certain regular season games. We've already seen injuries kind of strike the Lakers. Anthony Davis missed a game. LeBron missed a game. Those things are going to happen periodically throughout the season. So on nights like that where you could have Zach Lavine to go be a really consistent second scorer, hey, I think it's a really, really solid fit. You saw Zach Lavine at the All-Star game. I don't know if it was last year. I think it was 2 years ago. They asked him who his dream teammate is. And I don't know if this is tampering, but he literally gets on the mic and says, "Man, I've always loved to play with a guy like LeBron or a big man like AD." Oh, you've always loved to play for the Lakers. So yeah, to me, the top two fits are Miami and LA. I just think Miami could pull off the deal quicker. That's what gets it done. DeMar DeRozan is a guy who I think really you could kind of plop on any team. It just depends what he's comfortable having his role be, right? A team that I immediately thought of, and I don't know if this is for right or for wrong, is the Golden State Warriors. I think that they very much so committed to being all in on the Steph Curry timeline, and they've been struggling offensively early in the season. They've dropped a couple games in a row. Clay isn't what he once was. Wiggins is off to a bad start to the year, and you'd have to move one of those contracts, I believe, to get DeRozan. So, you could move a Wiggins and another piece. I just think DeRozan's a guy who you're getting a bucket, right? The team's got other things. They've got shooting, they've got defense. But with DeRozan, that's a guy that when Curry's off the court can create his own shot. You could see DeRozan back to Toronto. I feel like their bigger problem, though, has been 3-point shooting. So I don't know if DeRozan really solves it, but if they want to commit to the mid-range game, again, it's really just about what kind of role is DeRozan willing to take. I mean, he could go be a six-man on just about every really solid team if that's what he's fine doing at this point in his career. Is there a dream landing spot for you for DeMar DeRozan?
Honestly, not too crazy. For me, I'm not the biggest fan of him. Ever since he kind of was stinging up the joint with the Raptors for like 5 years, 6 years in a row with
LeBronta.
Kyle Lowry, and yeah, he's a good basketball player. Nothing against him, but he just doesn't move the needle for me. So I really don't think of scenarios for that. But maybe, it sounds a little bit crazy, but maybe from Milwaukee, and maybe things aren't going how you think they are, and
I
maybe they
just
can
don't
get a
think they
guy
have the
like
trade
that.
assets
Yeah, I
at
don't
this
think they do
point.
too. But a team, like a high-powered team like that, maybe if they just need an extra boost,
Yeah,
possible.
I think the Kings are also a potentially
Yeah.
interesting one. I do think he's an upgrade over Harrison Barnes in terms of going into the playoffs. But again, the floor stretching that you have with Harrison Barnes just isn't there with DeRozan. So he is certainly a player where you hope for him to go to a team that has shooting, maybe Atlanta. They could be in the mix there. Alex Caruso is the player on this team that is just, I mean, plop him on any team. Like when we talk about fit, it's you could throw that conversation out the window because an all defensive guard who can guard the other team's best player, from Steph Curry to Kevin Durant, we've
Mhm.
seen this season. He can knock down the three, create his own shot. This is a guy who put him on any team. And this is the guy that I think every single team in the NBA should be calling about if they're looking to compete right now. Selfishly, I want a reunion with LeBron and the Lakers. Also, a backcourt of Alex Caruso and Austin Reeves is just for the culture. um, but yeah, to me, I think the Lakers are the prime landing spot. I think Caruso is a guy that the Bulls can keep until kind of more so the trade deadline, and it won't hinder the growth
Mhm.
and development of some of their other guys. It's not like he takes away shots. And if anything, I think he could be kind of a good on court mentor for them just for a little while longer. But yeah, man, I mean, you could talk Golden State, you could talk Dallas. What's the thing we talk about with Dallas? Their defense is the problem. You go get an all NBA defender. You can convince me that the Nuggets could go get him and then run a KCP off the bench. You can convince me that, hey, Boston wants the three best perimeter defenders in basketball. Uh, you could really just line it up anywhere for Alex Caruso. Is there a spot that you have in mind the way that I do the Lakers selfishly?
I think the Lakers is a pretty good answer for me. I mean, he seems, like the Lakers fit. Like I said, tough guy to really just piss off your opposing teams. Guarding a guy, a 1A guy, 1B guy in the postseason is a huge get. Like it just reminds me of even though Ben Simmons, that whole thing was a disaster. Just having a guy like him to be able to stop your main guy, just knowing like
And then your best player doesn't have to take that matchup
exactly,
either.
exactly, and he doesn't have to deal with all that stamina and energy, all that dealing with on defense. He can focus on offense like LeBron. So I think the Lakers could be a decent fit for him for sure.
Yeah, I just think, especially in the West, teams should be calling. In the playoffs right now, at guard, you got to guard Jamal Murray, Ant Man, Luca, Kyrie, Steph, Fox. You know, if the Clippers get in there, Harden, Paul George, Chris Paul on the Warriors, Booker, Beal. Like, there's just a matchup in every series at this point that you kind of need a really solid wing defender for. And to me, that feels like kind of the Lakers' biggest weakness at this point in time. Cam Reddish has looked great, and so has Vanderbilt. But, well, Vanderbilt's looked great when he's played. Obviously, hasn't played this season. So for me, that's really the perfect fit there. But we'll see, man. I think Caruso is going to warrant a first round pick just because of how many suitors he'll have. But let's talk less hypothetical, more actual. Draymond Green was suspended for choking Rudy Gobert, and it wasn't like it's more like a headlock choke, if you didn't see, which I'm sure you have at this point. A 5-game suspension. Basically, Klay Thompson and Jaden McDaniels early into the game get into a bit of a scuffle. It looks like Rudy Gobert tries to break it up. Maybe he's a little handsy with Klay Thompson in the breakup, according to what some Warriors players were saying. Draymond, being who Draymond is, the enforcer on this team, kind of comes over, puts him in a headlock, and kind of holds it for a good amount of time. It wasn't just pull him off my guy. It was like, oh, I've been waiting to get this one. That's what it felt like to me. And if you are the Warriors, publicly, you're mad at Draymond. Actually, you're not. This is who Draymond Green is. And I hate the narrative that's going around that this is ridiculous, unheard of, unseen. What? What NBA have you guys been a part of? And Draymond Green has earned the right to do things like this. He is a 4-time NBA champion, and he was crucial to every one of those title wins for Golden State. He was the second best player on their most recent title team. You could say Andrew Wiggins, but Draymond Green is the second guy for me out of the big three in terms of Steph, Clay, and Dre. And, when you win, and that's what you bring to the team, these things happen. Look at Dennis Rodman and his stint with the Bulls. Imagine how that would have been covered by modern media. The things he was getting into, the trip to Vegas during the playoffs and just not even talking to the team. There has been history of this, and there's been history of enforcers in the NBA. Charles Oakley, Ron Artest. There's guys like this all throughout it. So do I agree with the suspension? Yeah. It was an unnecessary move. Let's not act like Draymond Green did something that was like, oh, I can't believe Draymond would do such a thing.
It's funny because a lot of people forget. And what the finals was 2016 when LeBron beat the Warriors. Was that 2016?
Yes, sir.
A lot of people forget that Draymond Green in that Game 7, he scored, I think, the most points for that Warriors team, and it's kind of crazy that a lot of people forget just how great he is for that team. And, he's just a character, man. Any day of the week, I'm taking Draymond Green on my team because I know he's going to ride for me, and a lot of people forget that, you're playing in the NBA where it's very physical, there's a lot of stuff going on the court that you can't hear or see. And, was it a little over the top? Yeah. But at the end of the day, he's got his teammates back. And I honestly think he could be just pissed at Gobert for how much money he's stealing. And he's might be a little bit jealous of just what he's doing for the big men.
It's well established that they don't like each other. It's gone back. Draymond doesn't think that Gobert deserves all those Defensive Player of the Years. He thinks he was a little snubbed. They've kind of had some back and forths before in terms of things. Obviously, a lot of people in the NBA, when Gobert did the mics with the COVID situation, they didn't really like that. So it's not like Rudy Gobert is this well-loved NBA guy either. And a lot of times I'm of the belief that the athlete podcasts, there's certain insights that they definitely do have. Other things that they say we would know because we're athletes, I think that's a little not true. But for this situation, referring to the Pat Beverly podcast, his reaction to me told a deeper story. His reaction was, I can't believe Karl Anthony Towns didn't get up in there and pull Draymond off.
Yeah, 100%.
So his main reaction was, I can't believe that those guys on the Timberwolves are not out there representing. His reaction wasn't Draymond went too far, Gobert went too far. And obviously Pat Bev is another one of those asshole guys. And I mean that in the nicest way possible. He's in your face, he's got grit, he's a dog you want on your team riding for you. But I haven't heard a single NBA player say what Draymond did was over the top. I'll say that.
Facts. And you can't make that excuse that Cat's not a physical guy because freaking Ben Simmons was having him in a headlock and he had that whole situation against Philly, So you can't use that excuse. Oh, maybe, he's not that type of guy. He will definitely get in there if need be, if it's probably the right person.
Yeah, and Draymond's probably not the right person for a lot of people, which I understand. But the suspension of 5 games, do I think it's fair? Yeah, it's fine. You could have given anywhere from 5 to 10, and I don't think I would have batted an eye at it. Does it kind of suck with what the Warriors are up to? Yeah. They're not playing great right now, and then you're losing one of the key cogs in your team. I also saw Steve Kerr catching some strays for not punishing Draymond Green for these antics over and over again. In the playoffs last year when Sabonis went to the ground and Draymond stomped on his sternum, and they asked Kerr about it after the game. He said, that he hadn't seen it. And like he definitely could have if he wanted to by that point. And then they asked Draymond Kerr about this, and he said, "Hey, like I didn't see it, but guys were saying that Gobert was grabbing Clay's neck, so that is what it is." So people are like, "Oh, I can't believe Kerr's not more publicly punishing Draymond." And it's like, what? First off, like Steve Kerr was a player under Phil Jackson, who again was there for the Dennis Rodman situation, and let him go be Dennis from like the Last Dance documentary because he knew the leash on his player, like that he'd be back. Like, yeah, are we surprised that Steve Kerr kind of has a loose leash on his players? Look at what the team that he was on. They're, coming for Steve Kerr as a coach is just mind-boggling at this point. There's 4 rings as a coach. So I think the Draymond situation is what it is, and I don't think it's a huge deal. I just think it's swirly in the NBA season, and that's what we got to talk about. But I'm Team Draymond, and maybe it's just because I don't like Gobert. But let's talk about the in-season tournament, man. We're halfway through it now. Every Tuesday and Friday night, you got the courts, the uniforms, etc. Have you bought in? Does the in-season tournament bring you to your television any more than any other NBA night would?
I think it might after Tuesday. For me, I think it actually is working because I think what Adam Silver said was kind of on par is, when your team is in the finals, you have the 2 teams, the cities, and, like people watch here and there for like the big time players and whatnot. But for a tournament like this, you have every team wanting to buy in to watch your team possibly win the in-season tournament, which is like very true. Plus, you have all this entertainment going on because the players actually want to win and maybe even want to win some extra money, And I think they're just playing very awesome basketball. I think it's an awesome product. And I was a little skeptical at first, just because, we'll see how it goes. But I mean, it's doing well. And overseas, like in soccer, they do the same thing. And it's probably why it's working just as good because you have players that want to win. And especially the teams that maybe that don't have a shot at winning the finals or going far in the playoffs, they could win this, So it's a huge get that every team has a chance to win this thing.
Yeah, so
and the courts are fire too, I will say.
The courts have been hit or miss for me. I think some of them are so ass. But so I will say before I went down to Philly this weekend, I was kind of the mindset that the in-season tournament's cool and it's just kind of a way to make the NBA a talking point. But, it's nothing crazy. I didn't view it as any more significant than I do with the play-in games. Where, yeah, like, that's cool, but the team that's probably in the play-in game, like, isn't going to win. Yeah, the cup is cool, and whoever wins it, like, nice for them, but I don't really put any stake in it because what's on the line for players is just dollars. And, like, it doesn't change my life if Tyrese Halliburton gets another $500,000 this season. So I do think that potentially in the future, the prize for this is going to have to change. I've seen ideas floated off as whoever wins gets a guaranteed playoff spot in the top 6. Okay. My concern with that is if the Nuggets win, they were probably going to be a playoff team anyways. Somebody said, I believe this is Kenny Beecham, he said that you could get the playoff spot if like you're a lesser team, and if you're like a good team, you could swap that playoff spot for a lottery pick. So now you have like a 2% odds of getting the number 1 pick. But like those good teams would never get lottery picks otherwise. I think that could definitely be a little fun, especially because it'll most likely result in like the 15th pick of the draft. So nothing crazy, but the 15th pick of the draft is something that the Nuggets probably won't sniff for a while unless they won this cup. And I do think everybody would be trying. GMs would be like, hey, we got to get this pick, blah, blah, blah. You could use it as a trade piece. I think it would open the door for a lot of things. But in terms of the importance of it now, I was of the belief, like, yeah, it is what it is. I went to the office, and my office probably has like a couple hundred people there over the course of the weekend while I'm there. Um, and in Philly, so a lot of Sixers fans, right? Friday night, Friday, I'm at the office, and there's like people talking about watch parties for the in-season tournament. Yeah, a bunch of people are getting together, getting food, having a watch party for the Sixers game tonight for this in-season tournament. And I was like, oh. So like people are making an event of it, which I will say is good for the NBA. Because when you think watch party for a game, you first go like Super Bowl, finals, World Series, playoff games. Well, in terms of the general public, this is generating the same type of atmosphere. Watch party. Let's go out. Let's watch these games that are meaningful. The courts are different. And I don't know how long the court being different and the jerseys will have a lasting effect, but to get this thing off the ground, I think the NBA has done a really, really solid job. And in terms of the teams that are placing in it or winning, I want to pull up the exact bracket just so I could see, because I think we're getting good results. In the Eastern Conference, Group A, the Pacers are currently leading. In that group is the Hawks, the Sixers, the Cavs in Detroit. But the Pacers have been a really, really solid team this year. And obviously, there's a lot more games to be played. In Group B, the Miami Heat are leading. In Group C, the Boston Celtics are leading. And then the next team in, I believe, would be the Nets at this point. But that's just in terms of games. I guess it would be the Bucks, because in terms of winning percentage. But, if you told me that out of the East for this tournament, we got Pacers, Heat, Bucks, and Celtics, I'd say, all right, any one of those team wins it, I could take the tournament seriously. In the West, you got the Lakers leading, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, and then that last spot currently looks like it's going to either the Kings or the Jazz. If the Jazz won this tournament, I'm going to be honest, I think I would take it not very seriously. But, Lakers, Denver, and Minnesota, again, those are real-life top-tier teams in the West. So going back to a conversation we had 2 weeks ago, this tournament will be as taken as seriously as its first winner. That's my standpoint there. You said that you thought LeBron wanted this on his resume. Maybe you're right, because him and AD have played every in-season tournament game. I will say that. I do want to talk now about the Clippers. Some breaking news just came out on them. I don't know if you saw. It's kind of why I moved it up the docket. Russell Westbrook has, as a vocal leader of this team, requested to come off the bench so the offense can gel better. Do you buy it? Do you buy that it was Westbrook's idea?
Look, man, I don't buy anything from that team once they got Harden. I think that team is just gonna it's like a crock pot, bro. Eventually, I got all these ingredients going on. You got some good stuff in there, but you got the weird mixtures and stuff, and eventually it's just gonna blow up. And that's what's gonna happen with the Clippers, bro. It sucks because you have got like Russ. He's an awesome guy. He the people can say what they want about Russ. He's not the best team player, this and that, but he really gives it 110%, like when he steps on the court, and I respect that a lot. Kawhi Leonard too, like he has injuries, but he really pulls on. And for me, it's like you have all these guys, just they don't have the right dynamic, and I don't know why. Like as soon as the James Harden like rumors came out about the Clippers, I was a little confused because like you have Russell Westbrook and you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and his injury stuff. It just didn't really like fit the scheme, especially if you're in the West, And I don't know, man. Like if I'm a Clippers fan, like it just par to the course, because like they're just the laughing stock of the NBA, man. And like the Lakers always are gonna be ahead of them. And I give them credit for maybe trying, but we just knew this was gonna happen, and it's just the very beginning of it.
Yeah, 0-5 since Harden has joined. Haven't scored more than 110 points aside from one game against the Mavericks where they let up over 140. So the Clippers have not been a success. And listen, do I think they're going to be winless in the James Harden era? I do not. Do I think this team figures it out to the point where they get to be in the play-in? Yeah, I do. They have enough pieces. Once Terrence Mann's back, I think the lineup will sort itself out. But do I think this team sniffs championship aspirations? I don't. And that's what this trade was for. And if you are a Clippers fan, man, you have to be shaking in your boots at what the hell your franchise is going to look like, not just next year, but for the next decade, where they don't own the rights to any of their draft picks, whether it's pick swaps or just completely gone. Because at the end of this season, James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook are free agents. And I have no doubt that Steve Ballmer will give James Harden a max contract to fill the seats of that new stadium. And I have no doubt that he'll be able to convince somebody to stay with him or bring in somebody because he'll open up the bank account. But you think kind of in the second half of their careers that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard aren't going to look in the mirror and be like, 76ers got a lot of cap room. Go play with Embiid and Maxey, whatever they do this year. Yeah, the Miami Heat, man, they wanted me. They were interested. If Miami doesn't do the Zach Lavine situation, there could be some kind of sign and trade there with one of those guys. Hey, Kawhi, Toronto misses you, man. We still got the pieces. There's going to be a lot better options. Pretty much 29 better options in terms of what the future looks like for teams. So the Clippers got to figure something out. And Tyronn Lue may have the hardest job in the world today. That's where I'm at with that. But let's talk about the other side of that Harden trade. The 76ers, man, because they have been absolutely balling out ever since the deal. They had an 8-game win streak in there. They've kind of come back to earth a little bit here. They're still 8-3. They are second in the East right now. I want to pull up some just stats here. Joel Embiid on the season is averaging 32 and 11.5 with 6 assists. Tyrese Maxey is averaging 27.5, 5 and 7. Those two have just been so good. And Joel Embiid coming off an MVP, we kind of early in the season, based on the playoff performance, we're like, we're probably going to take this guy out of MVP conversations, but he has definitely vaulted himself back into them. He's probably top 3 right now. And Tyrese Maxey, at this point in the season, is a no doubt all-star caliber player. Hell, to me, he's an all-NBA level guy. I think he's been a top 15 player in basketball to start this season. The way he has progressed has just been so solid, man. And I didn't know if he was ready for this role. I don't think Sixers fans knew if he was ready for this role. And I'm going to be honest, man, I'm not sure if Sixers fans on their best day thought this would be how well he was playing. A near 30-point per game score while having 7 assists. He has an amazing assist to turnover ratio. He's so smart with the ball. And even when Joel Embiid's off the court, the way Maxey has played, the Sixers are actually plus points in certain spots where even last year with James Harden, if Embiid was off the floor, Embiid had to miss time, there was a real drop-off, and it just hasn't been there with Tyrese Maxey. And, credit to all the role players too. Prayers up for Kelly Oubre going through what he's going through. Good to see that he's all right. But Tobias, Batum's even been really solid. B-Ball Paul, Melton. Nick Nurse has coached one hell of a basketball team. And a Sixers team who was always solid defensively is now a top 5 offense in the NBA. And they're real title contenders, man. At the top of the East with Boston. But for me, their ceiling is NBA championship. And it's because of Tyrese Maxey.
Hey, man, what a difference coaching does in basketball, because they've had this same structure of a team for 3 years and the same result was happening. You had guys running ISOs on big time possessions and just guys not kind of spacing out the floor, and just Doc Rivers was like a mess. And I don't know why they brought him back for another year, but that's a different situation. But Nick Nurse, man, I love the guy, bro. I thought he was an awesome hire. Who I wanted like from the jump, because he was won a chip, and
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that'll push your stars to where they're supposed to be. He's not a pushover, and I think Embiid needed that. He needed that guy to really push him to the top. And I'm really excited to see how it plays out in the postseason, because that's
Great players like being coached.
exactly. And with Tyrese Maxey, he's the perfect guy for that. He's an awesome team player. He's from Kentucky, so he has that coaching love, and he's just kicking ass, bro. I loved him ever since they drafted him. He's been like one of their top guys, skill set's awesome. Never complaining about anything. And he's balling out, bro. And for him to take that next jump is so huge, because the Sixers' future was really uncertain going into this year. I think, if the Sixers kind of really were like 500, just like kind of got to maybe the second round and lost again, who knows what would have happened with them, like Embiid trade rumors, this and that. But hey, man, with Tyrese really kicking ass this year, Embiid's probably going to stay, I hope. And then Maxey's going to stay, get his max contract. You got more room for next year in the off season for a free agent, maybe trades. So the future is really bright, and I'm just excited because it's awesome team basketball. You can tell the city is thriving off Maxey and just the team, and so are the players. So I'm excited to see how they play. And I know they lost 2 in a row against the Pacers and the Celtics, but they're going to lose some games here and there. But I'm really excited to see how they play by the All-Star break, because if they're a top 2 seed by then I'll be like, okay, like this is legit.
Yeah.
So,
because last year the Utah Jazz were the 1 seed in the West for the first month.
So I'm gonna wait and pump the brakes a little bit, not get my hopes too high, but it's looking good. So excited.
Yeah, for sure. And for reference, the last time Nick Nurse had a top 10 player in basketball, he won a title. Kawhi left. And, Nick Nurse still coached a hell of a team there in Toronto. Now he has another top 10 guy, clear as day, in Joel Embiid. He's getting the most out of his role players. We talked about the Zach Lavine situation earlier, and another reason I don't like it is because it's a 3-year deal. I like the flexibility that Philly has given themselves this offseason to look at this season, whether they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, win a title, lose in the second round, etc. You know what you have in Tyrese Maxey, a star. You know what you have in Joel Embiid. You have the right coach, and then you could tackle the offseason with a lot of money. And it doesn't have to be spent on one player. You can go get the right role players, or you could pair certain contracts and now the draft capital that you have to go get a player. I want to see them target OG Anunoby at the deadline. He's on an expiring deal. You could pay him if it works out, and if not, you could let him go.
And it's funny you mentioned this, because I just got a thought in my head. I've been thinking about this for a while. Is this Sixers team is kind of similar to how the Nuggets are set up. They have a big man, and then they have their second guy in Jamal Murray and Tyrese Maxey, and then they have role players. And I think they're understanding that maybe they don't need that third star. They just need to fill 7, 8, 9 guys for when times get tough, need some heads. And I think that's what they're going to do moving on, which I think would be the smartest move. So that's why the Lavine stuff, I'm like, So I think that's what they're going towards,
I think in today's NBA, especially with the way that the salary cap is about to work, the best method of winning basketball is a 2-man group at the top and slotting in the correct role players who are willing to buy in at the right price. The Tobias Harris contract worries me a little bit because of that, but Michael Porter Jr. has a big deal, and the Nuggets are about to be fine as well. So, if you go get OG Anunoby, you can't throw him a max this offseason. KCP isn't on a max. OG Anunoby's a guy, though, that I think could win the Sixers a title this season. To me, their biggest threat is Boston. without a doubt. And to me, I still think Boston is the top of the top in the East as it stands, healthy. But if you get OG on Anunoby, now you have a real wing defender on your team that can match up with Tatum and Brown, which I love Tobias, but he's not that. He's not close to what OG is defensively. And you'll have the best player in the series in Joel Embiid. You'll have Tyrese Maxey, who will have his work cut out for him, being guarded by Drew Holiday and Derek White. And then you'll be able to give Jason Tatum his work cut out for him with Tobias and Anunoby. So I'm excited for the Sixers' future. I just would really love to see Nick Nurse go out there and get his former guy from Toronto and bring him to Philly. And then I think, with the way that the Bucks have been playing, again, it's early in the season, and I didn't put them in here, but I'll say this for Milwaukee. Is my concern high? No, not really. I do think, with stars coming together, sometimes it takes a minute. LeBron and the Heatles famously started off about 500 through the first 30 games. So, and this isn't like a Clippers situation in Milwaukee where it's a bunch of non-proven guys. I've seen Giannis win at a high level, and I know what Dame is as a player. They'll figure it out. Rookie head coach too. So a lot there. But that's all we got for today's episode. Be sure that you check out our NFL Week 11 preview if you have not already. We'll be running these basketball episodes back once a week, and then when the NFL season ends, we'll probably switch up the schedule a little bit. So stay tuned for that. But drop all your thoughts on everything we talked about today below. Where do you see Zach Lavine, DeRozan, Caruso being traded? What's your thoughts on the Draymond suspension in-season tournament? And your thoughts on the James Harden, Sixers, Clippers trade a couple weeks removed. Until next time, we'll catch you guys later. Peace.